Don't speak ill of the dead is bullshit, and I think we should be talking about why. This is one of my all-time least favorite phrases that people lob at grievers, and it has this expectation of once somebody dies, they become a saint, and you can never say anything bad about them again. It basically is society telling you, or your friends and family telling you, your pain is less important than preserving the image of someone who's no longer here. Hi there, grief growers, and welcome back to the Grief Grower podcast. I am so honored to be sitting here with you today. If you've been growing alongside me in my work for a while, welcome back. And if you are new to me and my work, hello. My name is Shelby Forsythia. I am a grief coach, two-time, very soon to be three-time author, and the founder of Life After Loss Academy. And for many years, I have had the honor of helping grieving people stop feeling lost, stuck, broken, and alone, and start helping them build lives that they genuinely love from the lives that loss forced them to live. This includes not only death-related losses, which we're going to be talking about at great length on the show today, but also losses like divorce and breakup, major diagnosis, and every other big life transition that changes your life. Here on Grief Grower, we believe that grief is not something we get over. It is something that we grow with and alongside, and that when we stop treating grief like a problem to be solved and start treating grief more like an invitation to live more deeply, we create the most meaningful lives we possibly can that are rich with the memories that we carry and the struggles that we faced and the precious knowledge of what it is to be alive on earth right here and right now, and all of the weight and the lightness that that implies. Before we get into the meat of the episode today, because this is a really good one I have for you, I want to get two event announcements out of the way. As I've mentioned in past episodes of Grief Grower, the Grieftastic Book Fair is coming up. It is next week on Friday, November 21st. It is just like your childhood book fair, only sadder. So if you've ever attended a Scholastic book fair here in the United States, I don't know if they're around the world, but here in the United States, I had them for sure during elementary and middle school. It is just like that, but exclusively focused on grief books. You will be meeting me and more than 40 other grief authors live at the Lux Hotel in Los Angeles for a one-of-a-kind gathering that is devoted to grief literacy, grief books, community, food, and connection. You will enjoy a day of conversations and panels, one of which I am leading, immersive experiences, and you will come away with the very best souvenir of all, something called a sad sack, which is a tote bag full of all the things that you received that day. Featured authors besides me include Rachel Cargill, Rebecca Sofer, who has been here on Grief Grower, David Kessler, Hope Edelman, and Jennifer Pasteloff. You can join us for the VIP brunch from 10 to 11:30, and the book fair takes place from 12 to 4. And when you sign up through the link in my show notes, shelbyforsythia.com/events, you can use the code GRIEFBFF for 15% off tickets before they sell out. To my knowledge, they are still available, so snag them while you can. And all ticket proceeds benefit an organization called Our House, which is a grief support center that provides services all across Los Angeles. The next thing that's coming up is almost immediately after, about 2 weeks after, in the first week of December, on December 4th in Toledo, Ohio. For the very first time ever, I am coming your way to teach a workshop with an organization called Good Grief Northwest, called Staying Connected to a Loved One Who Has Died. And this is all about how do I do the holidays and grief together. So if you are a parent or a caregiver to children or a family who has lost a loved one, and you are like, how do we keep holiday traditions alive? How do we remember someone we love who has died through the merriment and the, insanity of the joyful holiday season? How do we do grief with all of that in tow? So in a 60-minute interactive workshop, I am going to teach you how to use the five senses, which is something kids, teens, folks of all ages can apply to remember and honor a loved one who has died through things like music or food or movies or scents and more. Together in the workshop, we will explore simple and meaningful ways to weave sense-based traditions into your holidays and beyond. These are things you can use for birthdays, death anniversaries, graduations, and more, and will help you create lasting connections for your entire family. You will learn in this workshop how to use your five senses to call forward positive memories of loved ones, how to involve kids and teens and other family members in creating these traditions so you're not like using all your precious energy to spearhead the thing yourself, what to do when painful sense memories kind of overshadow the happy ones, and what to do when everybody wants something different from the holiday season. And once again, you can sign up for this workshop. Tickets are still available. They're $10 a piece at shelbyforsythia.com/events. That event does have a capacity, so please sign up sooner rather than later if you're interested in attending, and I look forward to seeing you there. Okay, today's topic is one I am so lit to talk about because it is something that I think a lot of society at large, not necessarily grief professionals, but society at large would find scandalous or controversial. And it is the phrase, "Don't speak ill of the dead" is bullshit. And I think we should be talking about why. This is one of my all-time least favorite phrases that people lob at grievers, and it has this expectation of once somebody dies, they become a saint, and you can never say anything bad about them again, and that is actually really harmful to grieving people who are trying to process not only what they love and miss about a person, but maybe things that were hurtful or they wish had gone differently, and to be able to speak the whole truth of what happened is so, so important when you're grieving. But when somebody dies, our society, I'm mostly talking about the United States and other Eurocentric societies like the UK and so on, other colonized societies, they encourage us to default to polite euphemisms. They passed away, they went to sleep, they're in heaven now, or glowing tributes if they were a devoted this or a loving that or a caring whatever, and carefully filtered memories. When somebody dies, we are often pressured to soften sharp edges, to rewrite somebody's entire history, and to strip away complexity and nuance and pain, frankly, in the name of respect. I'm doing air quotes for those who are watching on YouTube around respect. But for many grieving people, myself included, especially anyone who is mourning someone who was abusive or absent or estranged or toxic, this societal norm can feel like a form of emotional gaslighting. The phrase, "don't speak ill of the dead," or said another way, "never speak ill of the dead," that's more of a declarative, is everywhere. It gets tossed around at funerals and in family conversations and even in therapy rooms and grief support circles. And while it might seem on its face like a call for dignity or decorum, of like, rise above, take the high road, it often serves a darker purpose. The effect is that it silences people who are still living, survivors. It protects abusers and people who have harmed others, and it erases hurt from the story of your grief. And pain can be a very real part of the story of your grief. And finally, it makes mourning and bereavement and grief harder than they already are, because half of it is being relegated, or more than half is being relegated to the shadows. You are being asked to suppress it for dignity. For who? For who? And before we get any further on this episode, I have to say I am not an expert on abuse or trauma. I am simply a grief coach who works with people navigating all kinds of loss, including losses of relationships that were difficult or damaging or complicated in some way. What I can speak to and what I'm going to speak to in this episode is not necessarily the effects of abuse or trauma, because that is not my area of expertise, but I can speak to this. Grief, I know for sure, is not always tidy or peaceful or rooted in love. Sometimes grief is all tangled up with rage or betrayal or trauma or even relief. We talked about this in the episode where we talked about grief is not just love with nowhere to go. That phrase is so simplistic and is also one of my least favorites. And I think that when we make room for the entirety of grief, all the complexity of grief, then we get to grieve more fully. We get to tell the whole truth about it. We get to heal even more deeply than we would have if we were only allowed one tiny micron of only the positive or only the good memories or only the happy things, or only when you can say something nice. So I want to get into, where did this phrase, "don't speak ill of the dead," come from? And in my research, I found that this quote dates back to ancient Greece, and you'll have to forgive my pronunciation here. I took some Latin in high school. We'll see how well I do. The phrase is "de mortuis nil nisi bonum," and it translates to "of the dead, say nothing but good." And originally this was meant to discourage gossip after somebody died, and it was kind of like a last rite of social protection in Greek times. That's as much as I could find. But in modern times, this the year of our Lord 2025, this phrase has morphed into something insidious. It is not about preventing gossip necessarily or preserving the dignity of the person who died. It is now often used to silence real, lived experiences of harm and pain. So let's transition into why "never speak ill of the dead" is hurtful to grieving people. If you are someone who is harmed by a person who died, this societal rule, don't speak ill of the dead, reinforces a damaging idea. It basically is society telling you, or your friends and family telling you, or whoever's mouth it's coming out of telling you, your pain is less important than preserving the image of someone who's no longer here. And here's how that plays out in real life with real grievers. 1. Survivors feel gaslit by people who insist the dead person, quote, did their best or meant well. 2. Estranged family or friends are guilted into attending funerals and pretending that they're grieving someone who abused or abandoned them. 3. Mourners in toxic relationships struggle to process mixed emotions, grief and rage, loss and relief, because there is no socially acceptable space to talk about the all of it. And 4, people in communities of faith or cultural communities with very strict sets of beliefs are pressured to forgive or minimize or spiritually bypass their loss in the name of keeping the peace in the family or in the culture or remaining in good standing with God. But I want to say this very clearly. Grief does not become more sacred by lying about the dead. It becomes more sacred and more truthful by honoring the reality of your relationship with that person, your life with that person, even when that reality is uncomfortable. And I have to say, too, I think I'm using some heavy and weighty language in this episode. I'm talking about abusers and toxic people and narcissists and violence. But even if your dead person, even if the person who died was not someone you would refer to as an abuser or a toxic person, there are things they probably said or did or didn't say or didn't do that hurt you. You are allowed to speak those truths out loud just as much as someone who is forced to endure years of terror or violence under their influence or in that relationship. To give you an example, for instance, I publicly share a lot that my mom died without accepting my identity as a queer person. Many of our last conversations, the last 2 years of her life, I did not know they were the last 2 years of her life, but the last 2 years of her life were fights about whether or not I was going to be in heaven with my family or in hell because I was bisexual, and my mom literally could not cope with that. And while I have slowly and painfully and through a lot of different mediums found my own path to forgiving my mom regarding her words and her actions, talking about her dying with unfinished business, with things unsaid between us, and this sense that when she died, I was not loved all the way for all of me, has helped me process and cope with the grief that she died. And clients and students that I've worked with inside Life After Loss Academy share similar stories about friends or family or loved ones who said or did hurtful things when they were alive. And I often say, if we live long enough, it is inevitable that we will be hurt by others and hurt others, whether we intend to or not. And when it comes to grief, it is really normal. It's okay to mourn a lack of resolution or a failure to understand one another or physical or emotional distance, or simply the sense that some part of them could not see or hear some part of you. Telling the truth about the ways in which we were hurt by someone who died can help us not only grieve the parts of them that we love and miss, but also the parts of them that were imperfect or destructive or simply absent from our lives or our relationship with them. This is kind of the fun part of the episode where I want to get into what sparked the idea for talking about this. And these are 3 real obituaries. These are not AI generated. These are real obituaries that were printed in newspapers that dared to speak ill of the dead. And these started coming around, I'd say like 2013 to today, where people, friends and family of those who have died, published obituaries about them that some people called scathing or upsetting or brutal, because they were honest about the person's life. They were not kind. And so I want to read 3 of these for you to just share some examples of what it is like for people who are alive to tell the full truth or to tell their version, their life and reality with someone in their life they were related to or friends or family with who died, and see if this gives you sort of any permission to be more open or be more transparent about a loss that you have faced, especially if it's with a person who was less than kind to you. The first one I'm going to read aloud is from Kathleen Demlau, who was born in 1938 and died in 2018. This was first published in the Redwood Falls Gazette, and at first, Kathleen's obituary sounded like a standard notice, but about halfway through, the obituary read, quote, "She abandoned her children, Gina and Jay, who were then raised by her parents. She passed away on May 31st, 2018, and will now face judgment. She will not be missed by Gina and Jay, and they understand that this world is a better place without her." This is very simply said. It's like, she abandoned her children. She will now face judgment. She will not be missed, and the world is a better place. And these 4 sentences, these statements, shocked people who read this newspaper, but for many survivors of toxic or estranged parent relationships, reading this obituary was like, oh, like a breath of fresh air. Someone finally told the truth about a person who was less than loving in life. I will say I found this obituary online, but it was removed from the newspaper's website just a week after it was published because many readers of the paper argued that it, quote, went too far. But my hunch is that these readers believed in the myth of don't speak ill of the dead, or another similar phrase of if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, which is another way of silencing people who have been harmed and abused. The second one, this one's a little bit longer, is for Leslie Ray Sharping, who was born in 1942 and died in 2017. And this was originally published on the Carnes Funeral Home website and read, Leslie Ray Popeye Sharping was born in Galveston on November 20th, 1942, and passed away January 30th, 2017, which was 29 years longer than expected and much longer than he deserved. At a young age, Leslie quickly became a model example of bad parenting combined with mental illness and a complete commitment to drinking, drugs, womanizing, and being generally offensive. Leslie enlisted to serve in the Navy, but not so much in a brave and patriotic way, but more as a part of a plea deal to escape sentencing on criminal charges. Woof. Leslie's hobbies included being abusive to his family, expediting trips to heaven for the beloved family pets, and fishing, which he was less skilled with than the previously mentioned. Leslie's life served no other obvious purpose. He did not contribute to society or serve his community, and he possessed no redeeming qualities besides quick-witted sarcasm, which was amusing only during his sober days. With Leslie's passing, he will be missed only for what he never did, being a loving husband, father, and good friend. Leslie's passing proves that evil does in fact die, and hopefully marks a time of healing and safety for all. This is a brutal one. This is a recounting of a person's life who seemed to be kind in no way at all, and the obituary's writer, who was Leslie's daughter, explained that she wanted to reclaim truth and dignity for everyone surviving the aftermath of his life here on Earth, even if it meant tarnishing the memory of him. And she told a CNN affiliate at KTRK in a statement, quote, "I am happy for those that simply do not understand. This means you had good parents. Please treasure what you have." So she's like, very similar to a lot of grieving people saying things like, be grateful you don't understand. Be grateful you do not get this level of pain. Be grateful you did not have a father like this, is her response to people saying, that's too harsh or that's too brutal. She's like, yeah, be grateful you don't know. I had to live through the brutalness and the harshness of it, to put some words in her mouth. But yeah, absolutely. I can totally see how this was something that she felt compelled to write after his death. The last one I'm going to read is a person with a very long name, Linda Lernell Smith Harvey Cullum Hartstall, who was born in 1951 and died in 2023. And I read that the reason that all 4 of her married names were included was because she was married 4 times, all to men who were hurtful or hateful to her daughter, who published this obituary of Linda Lernell. This was first published in the Three Rivers Commercial News, and Gail Heckman, who was Linda's estranged daughter, published this obituary. Gail knew her to be, through her own reality lived experience, a liar on an emotional, physical, and financial level, and Gail had gone no contact with her mom in 1999. She found out from a family friend that her mom died in 2023, and she wrote an obituary that included these snippets. I'm not including the whole thing because it is quite a graphic description of her childhood and the violence that she endured at the hands of her mother and her husbands. But this is something that I feel okay sharing on this podcast as an example of don't speak ill of the dead. Let's turn that on its head. Quote, "As a mother, Lernell was violent, hateful, and cruel. She was physically, mentally, verbally, and financially abused Gail. In March of 2023, Gail unexpectedly found out who her biological father was through a popular online DNA service. After years of deception from Lernell regarding who Gail's father was, Gail and her family are navigating the waters of getting to know their paternal biological family. This is it. Lernell will never be the mother and grandmother that she could have chosen to be with her family. That door is closed forever with her death. This is what Gail and her family grieve, who their mother and grandmother could have been. Lernell will not be missed by Gail or her family. They all understand the world is a much better place without her." And just like Kathleen Demlow's obituary, Linda Lernell Smith Harvey Cullum Hartstall's obituary was removed by the newspaper after it received complaints from readers and other family members, and almost immediately a non-inflammatory, sanitized version, just including her birthday and death dates and when she was married, replaced this scathing obituary that was submitted by her daughter. Jordan Wilcox, who is an assistant publisher of Wilcox Newspapers that originally published the first obituary, told the Detroit News, which is, to be fair, a conservative libertarian newspaper as far as I could tell from a Google search, was sharply criticized for removing the first obituary, with many people claiming that the paper's publishers and editors were, quote, abuse apologists. And I am inclined to agree. I have to say, though, beyond newspapers and obituaries, other media in recent years have also opened up discussions about it being okay or normalized or validating to speak ill of the dead. I, for example, vividly remember reading Cheryl Strayed's essay called Baby Bird, which is a Dear Sugars column that was published in the Rumpus in 2010. Content warning there for graphic childhood sexual assault. And there's also a more recent book written in the past few years that I know some of you are probably thinking about right now by the Nickelodeon child star Jeanette McCurdy, titled I'm Glad My Mom Died. Each of these, and so many more media and resources, has served as cathartic outlets for survivors of abuse and trauma and violence to see themselves in the lives of others and to feel permission in their own way, whether publicly or privately, to speak ill of their own dead. And the way I see it, these individuals' comments on the lives of those who've died were not written to be meaninglessly cruel. These people are not doing this for no reason. They were written or broadcast or put into essays or put into audiobooks because healing often requires honesty, especially for those who have been denied honesty in life. And with each new scathing, quote-unquote, obituary or tell-all memoir about a person who was less than loving in life, a doorway to grieving more fully and more transparently for all of us is opened. And I want to drill down on this statement that telling the truth does not make you cruel, because speaking ill of the dead is not about vengeance. For some people it is, but for most people it's not about vengeance or revenge. It is about reclaiming narrative power, the power of your story when your lived experience or your voice or your story was denied or diminished. You are not mean for telling the truth. You are not disrespectful or a bad child or a bad family member for naming very real harm, and you are not a monster for having mixed or messy feelings about someone who died. And I have to say that many grieving people that I've spoken with that have been clients and students, or whose stories I've read online or in books or listened to on podcasts, they say things like, I did not begin to truly grieve until I felt permission to tell the whole story about who this person was to me, what they did to and with me, and what the finality of their death means, because that is a whole new plot twist in the story of your relationship to them. And some of the most agonizing grief that I have witnessed has come from people grieving someone they had a complicated or a painful relationship with. So these are like little, or big, you can feel them as big, permission slips that I want you to know if this applies to you right now. If you are grieving someone who is estranged from you, who abused you, or you simply had a complicated relationship with. Number 1, you are allowed to feel relieved and grieving at the same time. You can be so glad that they're dead, and also heartbroken that things will not ever be different. That is a closed door for all of the joy and all of the pain that that implies. Number 2, you do not owe them, the dead person, a prettied up or rewritten history of their life. I often joke, I'm like, if you want to be remembered well, you should have behaved better. Like that, I don't know what else to tell you. If you want to be remembered fondly, you should have been a person who it was easy to remember fondly. Number 3, you are not obligated to protect their image if they did not protect you, your heart, your mind, your body, or your spirit. Number 4, you get to grieve the parent, partner, friend, sibling, insert relationship here that you needed in the moment, in your life, and not just the one you were had. Said another way, you will not only grieve for the person they were in life, you will grieve for who they could have been or who they were supposed to be for you. I see this so much with parent loss especially, or with loss related to violence or addiction. If they could have been a different person, they could have made different choices, they could or have or should have been a different influence in my life. And they weren't. And that is worth grieving just as much as the truth of the life that they lived. And none of these permission slips, these little 4 bullet points, are about you being mean, again, for the sake of being mean. You're not just doing it for no reason. These permission slips are about allowing you to feel free, to feel the entirety of your grief, even the parts, and especially the parts that are less than lovely or less than pretty according to other people's eyeballs. They are about expanding your definition of grief so that there is room for all of you, everything from if you had any happy memories, all the way to the devastating truths of what you lived with this person who died. As we get to the end of this episode, I want to tell you, here's what to say. When someone tells you, don't speak ill of the dead. So when somebody comes up to you and you're like talking about the experience of your life and they say, never speak ill of the dead, you can say something like, telling the truth isn't the same as speaking ill. Or, I'm processing my grief the best I can, and that includes the hard parts. Or, I don't think pretending about insert person's name here, I don't think pretending about their life helps anyone heal. Or you could say, grief is complicated. I'm allowed to feel more than one thing at once. Or you can pull a page out of my book and say, if they wanted to be remembered with love, they should have been more loving. You do not need to defend yourself to other people who are saying things like, don't speak ill of the dead, but you can advocate for your voice and your story and your healing. And if things get hard, or if somebody will only accept conversation with you about grief, if it is in a positive light, you have more than enough of my permission to put up boundaries or to step away from that relationship for as long as it serves you, whether that's a temporary thing or a long-term thing. And we'll do episodes later on how to negotiate friendships with people in your life who are still alive, who you are grieving alongside, because no one does grief in a vacuum. We also did an episode over the summer in 2025 about friendships in the aftermath of loss, so you can go back and find that one as well. As we wrap up today, I have to say, the truth is healing, even when it hurts. You do not honor the dead or do them any service by lying or by covering up your emotions. You do not heal by pretending that you are not hurt or that you have never been hurt. And you certainly do not make grief easier when you erase how complex and multi-layered and painful it is. If the person you lost who died, or the relationship that ended, harmed you, neglected you, abandoned you, or simply was not who you needed them to be, you are still allowed to grieve them. You are allowed to be angry, you are allowed to be disappointed, you are allowed to ache for or long for or have a kind of broken nostalgia for what could have or would have or should have been. And most of all, you are allowed to be honest about your lived reality with them was like. Your story does not stop mattering just because someone else's story ended. And perhaps, I think, the best and most beautiful thing that you can do to honor an abuser or toxic person who died, should you choose to honor them, is to tell the whole truth about what happened and seek healing from it in whatever ways resonate with you. Commit to making sure that their legacy of pain ends with them, that is a period that you can gently place on the end of their sentence. This not only helps you take care of your heart, but ensures that when the day comes, that you will be someone that your family and friends will speak of with love and admiration and care. After all that they survived, they were gentle, they were kind, they were focused on their healing, they were interested in hearing and seeing others. That is a legacy that a legacy of pain can create. And if you are looking for grief support surrounding a relationship that you would consider less than loving, I encourage you to join us inside Life After Loss Academy, which is my online course and community. Together we'll help you name exactly what you've lost. For instance, mourning the person who died, but mourning what could have been, what the future was supposed to be, hope for repair, the ways in which they hurt you, so on and so forth. I will help you tease apart emotions like guilt and regret and disappointment and rage, and also establish clear but kind boundaries with people who say bullshit like, don't speak ill of the dead. You can learn more and join at the link in the show notes, or by visiting shelbyforsythia.com. That's all for this episode of Grief Grower. Thank you so very much for joining me today. If you're looking for grief support beyond this show, you can find free workshops, blog articles, and my signature What's Your Grief Support Style quiz at shelbyforsythia.com/links. And if you'd like to get support for your unique loss experience, join us in Life After Loss Academy, my online course and community. There, I'll walk you through my 5-step grief framework, GRIEF, for rebuilding after loss, and you can get live coaching from me every single week to answer your questions. Replays of our coaching sessions are always available if you can't attend live. It's just $33 a month to join, or $22 a month if you're a marginalized or financially stressed griever, and you can cancel at any time. If this podcast felt validating, comforting, educational, or otherwise helpful to you, please do subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And be sure to share this show with a friend, because you never know what someone you love is going through. Grief Growers, hosted by me, Shelby Forsythia, with theme music by Addie Goldstein. Until next time, Grief Growers, I see you. I am so incredibly proud of you and the work that you're doing in the world. And I love you, because even through grief, we are growing.